All right, and welcome back. We're meeting new candidates for parish president. Some new names have surfaced. One of them is with us today. Miss Aronda Smith is with us. And first of all, thank you for getting involved in local government. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. So, like all the other candidates, 21 minutes to get to know you a little bit. And for people out there who are wondering, well, who's Aronda Smith? Who are you?
All right, so I guess I'll start by saying I'm a Houma native. So my family's from Gibson, Louisiana. I just lived in Gibson until I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and then we moved up to Houma. So I'm a graduate of Terrebonne High School, 1987. After high school, I went to UNO for a year. So I left university and went to the military. So I served 3 years in the military. Ended up deploying for during Desert Storm. So I was a medic during Desert Storm. So I deployed for about 5 months. After that, I returned home. And I worked in the oil field industry, believe it or not. Deckhand, galley hand, and later on I became a welder. So I did that for some time here locally. And then I decided after my mom passed, I decided to move away. So I moved over to Philadelphia. Stayed in Philadelphia for about 20 years or so. But while I was away, I visit home quite often, 2 or 3 times a year, and I always kept my pulse on what was going on here in our local community. So I've been in servant leadership for quite some time, throughout my professional career. And currently I have a consulting firm.
All right. So let's talk about this. Obviously, parish president's race, very important race. It's someone who's going to lead the parish and do some different things. What would a Aronda Smith parish president look like? What would change? What would stay the same?
I think one of the things would definitely stay the same would be around coastal restoration, in our levee system. So I've taken quite a bit of time to take a look at what we've done so far and what we're doing. So the coastal restoration plan that's available to anyone, and it's fairly easy to locate, has quite a bit of initiatives that are in implementation phase. There are some that are in the engineering phases as well. But I think we've done a lot of work around coastal restoration. I think what's important is to make sure we can maintain those initiatives and make sure that we have funding as well to continue those initiatives to keep us safe in our communities in terms of flooding.
I always ask the question because I've always said I've covered a lot of parish presidents. It's sort of unprecedented the amount of flood protection work that has gone into the Gordy Dove regime as parish president. But pretty soon we're going to be in a phase where they're built, but we got to maintain them. Right. So how important would that be for you to make sure that it's one thing to build something, but it's another thing to keep it maintained?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. I guess when we're talking about like capital outlay and those sort of things, that's definitely high on the priority because it's ongoing. It's going to always be ongoing. In fact, some of the part of the master plan goes up to like 50 years from now. So it definitely has to be a priority in terms of maintenance, in terms of our levee systems and, again, the coastal, our barrier islands. And just coincident, I was talking to a friend in New Jersey, and we were having a conversation around coastal restoration, and he has a condo on a barrier island, so that kind of made me want to inquire a little bit more about that, obviously, to see the opportunities we may have, in terms of our barrier islands as well.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. You mentioned capital outlay. We all know how important it is. In the state of Louisiana, the governor has veto powers on a lot of things. So he could, with the flip of a pen, decide whether Terrebonne Parish gets funding or doesn't. We all know that Governor Jenda was very gracious in his monies to Terrebonne. Governor John Bell Edwards gave quite a bit to coastal projects. Capital outlay, how important it is, and do you feel you have the ability to get on that phone and lobby people and make sure they know Terrebonne is still going to get their funding?
Yeah, I believe so. I've always been a people's person, and building relationships has been one of my strengths. So I would continue to do that, as a parish president, obviously, making sure that I have a relationship with those folks because appropriations, we definitely need that support, you know.
And we talk about appropriation. We've seen people who are so focused in on their agenda, and they may be ultra conservative, or they may be ultra liberal. Would your agenda be so focused as to sometimes people vote just because they don't want to ruin what they represent, or would it be an understanding that a lot of people need projects, so it might be a little give and take? Where do you stand on that? Is there a lot of give and take in Aronda as a person?
I think that for me, I guess I just have to, remain connected to our constituents and understand their concerns and what's best for the parish. So those are the ways that I usually make my decision based on that. You know, it may not be something that I would support as a Aronda, but what I need to support as a parish president to move us forward would be the priority for me.
Yeah. And just real quick before the break, what made you decide to run?
You know what? When I thought about running, it's just an extension of service for me. You know, so this is just another way to continue to serve, honestly.
Yeah.
The mission
and thank you
continues
for your
me.
military service. We appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Honored to
All right.
serve.
We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have more with Miss Aronda Smith. Don't go away. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health Systems, modern technology, and timeless caring. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bourke, know your rights. And welcome back as we continue to meet the candidates who have announced that they're running for Terrebonne Parish President. And one of those that have announced and is in the race is Miss Aronda Smith. She's with us again. And once again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Let's talk about permitting. It's a big part of the parish. Some parish presidents take it in-house. They want to control the permitting department. They want it in-house. It's part of their departments. They appointed a department head. Some of them want it subbed out to South Central Planning or whoever they may choose at that particular point. What would your administration look like?
I guess in terms of the permitting, I would have to take a look at how well we're doing right now in terms of permitting. But my first response would be to keep it in-house. And if it's running well, then we keep it in-house. You know, and even if it isn't, I wouldn't say we would have to make the decision to move it from to outsource it. You know, basically, I think sometimes we can just kind of look at it and see what improvements we may need if it's not as efficient as we need it to be. So definitely, I would like to remain in-house.
You said you would come in town and sort of peruse around and stay in touch with everything, which is always good. Nobody likes to just totally leave where they come from. But, you know, and I've always said this, every parish president sort of brings their own feel. There's nobody that did a terrible job in the, I think I've had 8 or 9 since I've been on the air, but nobody brings anything real bad, but they all change it a little bit to sort of put their stamp on it. What would be your stamp? What's the most important thing you think that we need in this parish that Aronda Smith is going to make sure we have?
I think the one thing that I would say is voices matter to me. And my slogan is One Terrebonne, you know, so I would like to see how we can unite, you know, as a community on different levels in terms of the intercoastal. We got one side and we got another side there on the intercoastal. So how do we begin to unite as a community across all areas, you know, from down the bayou to up the bayou, across the bayou? You know, how do we be, and then unite not only as, you know, business owners, members of the community. I think apathy, we have a great bit of apathy here because we just went through the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, we got hit with Ida. So there's some level of apathy there in our community as well. So how, I can, inject just a little bit more positivity in the community and uplift them, because there's a lot of strengths here in Terrebonne Parish. And I think we need to lean into those strengths too, as people.
Let me ask you, because, and I've always said this on HTV, I'd always wonder why we didn't have more females running for offices or judgeships and I used to always say it, and just mean, for the longest time, there was nothing but men involved in the races. And I'd always say it when Jimmy the Gate was on with me. I'd say, man, when are the females going to run for office? Well, they're starting to run. Go to Lafourche Parish. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of females that run for office, but and I have to say that, back then it took a lot of guts for a female to jump in a race, but it tends to be more normal today, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems. I mean, we're finding women now across the spectrum. In corporations, they're leaders. So we're leading the way. In government now, there's a lot more women as well. So we're starting to lead the way.
Yeah. So there you go. And but it does take a lot of guts, because for the longest time, it seemed like it was perceived that men, had all the powerful positions, but then the women finally said, okay, we're going to take our shot at it. And once again, I aim at Lafourche Parish because they're a prime example of it. So let's talk about your administration. What would your administration look like? What type of people would be looking for, and sort of set the tone for us mentally what it would look like?
Just in terms of the administration, it's one of those things that, I have to do a careful assessment, before making decisions about who goes, who stays. Again, how efficient those departments are running, and getting feedback and, meeting with each head of the departments. And then also, too, some of the personnel in those departments, and just get some feedback before I can make a decision in terms of like exactly what the administration would look like. It's quite likely to look like the same. Maybe again, there's some improvements we can make, adjustments here and there. I can get some feedback, and I think we just keep moving forward.
Yeah, and of course, and that's always seems to be a question that when somebody's an incumbent and they're running for re-election, it's a little easier question for them because the people are sort of set in place. But would you consider keeping some people in place if they're doing a good job?
Of course, certainly. When I think about the workforce, the workforce, those jobs and those individuals that work those jobs are connected to their livelihood. So to go into an institution or organization and make a decision like that without carefully assessing everything that needs to be considered, I think it would be a little rash and brash. So that's not my style. Again, if the person is doing a great job, we can see how they can do even better job.
All right. And I want to allude to one thing as we're going to start going to the break, is that if you look at our school board and our parish council, they have had a lot of females. So it's only in certain sectors like judges and parish presidents and sheriffs and everything else, we haven't had a lot of female participation. But I do want to make the point that school board and parish council, it's a different story. All right, we'll take a break. We're coming right back. Last segment with Aronda Smith. Don't go away. Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough. All right, and welcome back as we continue our talk with Miss Aronda Smith. She is a candidate for parish president in Terrebonne Parish. One of the things I hear from business owners quite a bit is I ask them, because they'll come up to me and go, well, I'm thinking about shutting down. And I go, why? Because I cannot find workers. The workforce has changed quite a bit, and it puts a toll on some of the people that own the business, especially restaurants. I hear that a lot, that the turnover's a lot, they're having trouble. It's a different feel out there. What's your thoughts on workforce?
These are my thoughts on the workforce. So I did take a look at our local unemployment rates, which is fairly low, like 2.9. So it just makes me wonder what other barriers, in terms of folks entering the different industries. So you mentioned the restaurant and retail. I think there's some of the industries that they're having just a little bit of a challenge of getting folks to work. It may be wages, maybe transportation. I'm not sure what the barriers may be, but that's something we'd have to look at to see what those barriers to enter in those specific industries here locally.
Yeah. What would you do the first day that you'd be elected?
The first
Let's have a
day?
little fun with this interview. What happens on the first day?
Oh, man, I think the first day I'd be so celebratory, I don't drink or anything like that, but I'll find my way to celebrate, of course. But again, I'm really, my background is in people and processes. So I would probably be prone to, go into the offices, begin to just introduce myself to folks and get a feel of the culture presently in each department and get to know folks. Really get to know folks. So there'll be plenty of time to look at finance budgets and all of this good stuff like that, which I've taken my time to do as well. Plenty of time for that, but I think, you have to really invest in people. People is what runs our organizations.
You seem to me by your answers to like to look at numbers and processes. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because outcomes, how do we impact outcome? There's it's going to have to be with numbers, So we start off with these initiatives and they all sound good and they sound great, but we have to look at the numbers most often to see even funding sources. We talked about earlier, I think you asked me about the coastal, restoration and all of those things. And obviously there's a lot of money that we've already tapped into to support it. But we still need funding sources to continue to do that. And then also here just locally, rainfall, hurricanes and things like that are emerging that just happens. We have to be prepared. So I can say all of the things that sound so good, but we also need to make sure that we can fund these things. And I can look at numbers and see how the outcome has really made an impact, on what we desire to happen here. So pretty big on numbers, not as much as you would think. I'm big on people, but numbers matter.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Quality of life. I've heard criticism on every parish president that's come through, but sometimes, for example, Mr. Dove spent so much time on levees and water control projects that he doesn't get the credit for starting quality of life, like the parks and all the things that he's improved along the way. Before that, Mr. Claude was doing different things with turning lanes, and I could go to every parish president, and they've all tried to do a quality of life, some kind of stamp. But Mr. Dove has spent so much time on levees and all that people overlook the amount of quality of life things that he's done. What kind of quality of life would you bring in?
I guess I'm big on tourism. I travel a lot, and again, I've lived away for some time. So tourism is big. I always tell folks locally, like if I had $1 for everyone that asked me to make them some gumbo, I'd be wealthy. So people are curious about.
Can you make a good gumbo?
Absolutely not. And that's why I'm not wealthy.
Well, at least you're honest. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely
I didn't mean to interrupt you. All right.
No, you're fine.
All right.
So, I would like to see us tie into our tourism industry here locally. A lot of folks are curious about what we do here. So I know we do have the swamp tours, but in addition to that, let's add, I know there's something locally like the Rougarou, add that into the tourism industry. Also, cooking. Someone may want to come here to learn how to cook gumbo. Of course, I can't do it, I have to admit. But of course, there are people here locally that can, cook a good gumbo, add those cooking classes onto it. So we can maybe have excursions. So when people visit New Orleans, this can be an excursion. You come down, you do the swamp tour, you got the whole Rougarou thing going on, and, you got the cooking classes going on as well. So I'd like to see some things that we can incorporate into our tourism industry, because again, I've traveled a lot, and I get questions. I mean, have you ever seen an alligator? Have you ever eaten an alligator? You get all kind of things from those folks, but we're unique in that way. We're unique, and that's one of our strengths, our culture, and the pride that we have in our culture. So how do we, market that in a way to build around our tourism industry?
Right. As we look at it, a lot of times parish presidents have to pick up the phone and sort of get bold with the senators, Kennedy, or the Congressman Steve Scalise. We can go down the line. There's so many of them, but is that a strength of yours? Can you do that? Can you be bold with them if they need to be
most definitely
pushed a little bit?
Most definitely, because and as a parish president, again, you're here for your people and the constituents of your community. So it's about them at the end of the day. So whatever it requires has to be done. I'm a people person, and I'm flexible in some ways. But when when it's time for business, it's time for business. So if it's affecting people's lives, and a demand needs to be made, I'm here to do it.
All right, Aronda, once again, thank you for running. Thank you for your service in the military. And Aronda is a candidate now for parish president of Terrebonne Parish. And we thank her for coming on and sharing some of her ideas and what a presidency under her name would look like. So once again, we offer 21 minutes to everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll see you around the corner.